of the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats to order for February 20th, 2021. It's been a wonderful, crazy year already. We have impeached presidents for the second time. We have a global pandemic, and we now have Snowmageddon, Iceageddon, whatever you want to call it, Powerageddon. But I think as Texans, we're surviving, we're thriving, we're trying to get through this together. And I'm glad that everyone can make it today to kind of talk about some of the issues we have in the state with some of our great representatives. So as a tradition, we want to continue to always carry this on. We're going to do a quick Pledge of Allegiance. We'll have our treasurer, Tim Sexton, lead us in that. So if everyone would rise or participate how you would, we will go ahead with that. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everyone. So for the agenda today, we definitely are going to be talking about Texas politics, and we have our wonderful Vice President Terry Hodge, former Representative Terry Hodge, to tell us about what we need to know. We've got some great representatives representing us down in Austin on today. We have Representative Victoria Neave, we have Representative Ana Maria Ramos, and we have newly elected Jasmin Crockett, Representative Jasmin Crockett. So we're excited to hear from each of them about what's going on in Austin. One of the things that we heard from the membership survey is that education was a big focus. Not education, the topic per se, but educating club members on specific issues. And Terry Hodge has put together a wonderful program today to educate us about the Texas State Legislature. And she does have, which I'm going to share this to the chat, she created a wonderful guide to the Texas State Legislature that you can download. There's no cost to it. We just want to make sure we know who's getting it. So you can go ahead and download that, and Terry's going to talk about that for a moment or two and kind of explain a few things you might want to know about, because it is kind of confusing. And then we'll follow up hearing from the representatives on what their legislative agenda is. And then we'll conclude with a membership meeting today. We'll do an abbreviated one since we'll probably go over time today. We'll approve the minutes of the last meeting, have a few announcements, and then move on to adjournment. So on that note, the only thing I want to say is I'm going to post a few resources in the chat, and everyone, I would encourage you to do the same. If you know a local resource in Lake Highlands or the White Rock area, besides our great representatives that are doing something for those without heat, or a warming station, or food donations, please post those in the chat. I don't have all the resources, but I know as a group here and a club, we can kind of connect each other with those and make a difference. I thought it was great that Representative Ocasio-Cortez, is coming to Texas, or came to Texas, and raised $2 million for Texans in need. So shows that when Texans are in trouble, we help each other, and sometimes we have outsiders come in and help as well. So let's keep doing that. So I'm going to post a few of those resources in the chat, but for now, I'm going to turn it over to our Vice President, former Representative, the Honorable Terry Hodge, to talk to you about the Texas State Legislature. So welcome, Terry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And first, let me say good morning to everyone. I'd also like to do a special thank you to the representatives and their staff for working with me to make this program hopefully a very big success for today. I realize that right now you guys are going through a very hectic time dealing with moving to Austin and all the problems that you're having. But I'm going to say one thing to you. I'm very proud of all the Democrats, past, present, and probably the future, because we are not at all responsible for the problem that we are currently having with the electricity blackout. I can tell you that the Democrats and representative at the time, who is the current mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner, we introduced bills quite some time ago so that we would not have this type of problem. One of the bills, we buried it so many times, we finally had a funeral because we didn't want this to happen. So let me tell you, Democrats, be proud of your Democratic representatives, because had the state followed them, we wouldn't have this problem. What I was really going to do first was well, let me talk a little bit about the guide, since the president mentioned that. I hadn't planned to talk about it because I figured all you smart guys would get it, and just to see what I had to say, hell, you'd read it. But let me just tell you, back during my years in the legislature, what I wanted to do was to educate the people in my district about how the process works. So I did that little guide with the instructions about committees, what the committees do, the actual layout of the Capitol after it gone through all the work and renovations authorized by former late Governor Ann Richards. And I just wanted them to know, and especially children, to know when it talked about the state flowers and all of the things that represent our state, that the birds that they may not have known. I put that in there for them to let them know, the older people that looked at the book that may want to be involved in the legislative process, the glossary, so they would know what words that the legislature used actually meant. Because I can tell you, they didn't have a clue what the word sine die was all about, and now you do. So let me just move from there and go to our presenters for today that I'm very proud to have. My choice was to introduce them in protocol order and ask them to maybe make their speech and presentations in that order as well. However, our wonderful president, who preempted my introduction, did that. He introduced them in protocol order. So with that, let me just say a little bit about Representative Victoria Neave. Now, one of the things I didn't do for any of them was to put all of their presents and awards and honors that they had received, because I thought I'd let them do that themselves or put in their newsletter. Representative Victoria Neave represents House District 107. That's parts of East Dallas, Mesquite, and South Garland. The committees that she's on for this session is Juvenile Justice and Family Issues, that she may tell you a little bit about that committee. She chairs the committee. She's also on General Investigating, vice chair of that committee, and the chair of Human Services. Representative Neave is a great and thoughtful public servant. She is a practicing attorney. She practiced civil litigation, employment, and family law. Representative Ana Maria Ramos, House District 102, represents parts of Addison, Richardson, Dallas, and Garland. Representative Ramos is a wonderful and protective public servant. She is a practicing attorney and an associate professor at El Centro College. She too, Juvenile Justice, Family Issues, and Natural Resources Committee. Representative Jasmin Crockett represents House District 100, which represents parts of Dallas and a small portion of Mesquite. She's on Committee Business and Industry and Criminal Jurisprudence. Representative Crockett is a great civil rights public servant. She is a protecting civil rights attorney. Representatives, you have the floor.
Thank you, Terry. Yes, thank you so much, Lake Highland White Rock Democrats. It's good to be here, and I'm assuming we're going to go in the order of introductions. So is Rep. Neave here?
Where is Representative Neave? Well, maybe she hasn't made it yet. So let me tell you how we're doing it. Okay. I thought the best way to do this, and a way to let the club members know as well, with elected officials, how some things are done in protocol order. I didn't do it by house district numbers. I didn't do it by alphabetical name. So since Victoria, Representative Neave was the senior member, she was first. Representative Ramos, second in command, she was next. And our baby, sweet little representative freshman, Representative Crockett, she's third. So if Representative Neave is not here, then Representative Ramos, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm Ana Maria Ramos. I see some of my constituents there, but I don't necessarily go down south of 635. My area is mostly north of 635, like Terry had mentioned, Richardson, Addison, Garland, and the north part of Dallas. And so she's absolutely right. I know you all are very smart people, done your own research, as we all have when our lights got back on, or, you know, we were able to figure out what the heck was going on. And like she mentioned, you know, Abbott's hand is in all of this disaster, but mostly the Republicans, you know, who this is what their big business, deregulation, you know, BS has gotten us. And so it's ridiculous when children are freezing to death in this state. What are we, the fourth largest energy producer in the country? And so there's a lot that we need to address, but the truth is, we're still not in power. And so as much as we can, and now they have cake on their face, so maybe we'll be able to move ahead a little bit. But, you know, they are still the ones, as Terry mentioned, who decide the agenda for the committees and what we're going to hear and what we're going to be able to get on the floor to get voted on. And then the governor, what he's going to veto, right? And what he's going to let through. Like, their hands are on all of this. And so it's very frustrating as you're there serving and fighting. They've been able to create this disaster and then literally go on vacation, right? Which is what Ted Cruz did. But I am, many of you all know, family law attorney as well. And so I focus a lot on families, and in my legislation, in addition to supporting what we're looking at is legislation to address some of the price gouging that's going on, because that seems to be affecting a lot of families now after the fact, the price gouging, and also protecting our senior citizens. Fortunately, we were able to help in our network and reach out to the people that we know. We had a senior citizen home a facility here in around our community who was without light, and their seniors for like 5 days didn't have water. I mean, didn't have power. And, you know, the facility said they can go to a warming center, but they didn't have cars either. If you know seniors, a lot of these people did not have cars, had walkers. So there was no way for them to get to a warming center. So fortunately, we were able to help get their power back on the same day. But from my understanding, there was a lot of people with need that were used to not asking for it. And so I think, you know, with the connections and people in the community, they were able to get some support, but there's a lot more work to be done. So in addition to the price gouging that we're looking at, is also, as a family law attorney, protecting families, but protecting our most vulnerable, our elderly. You know, part of this Republican profits over people policy that they advance and this deregulation is also the deregulation or the lack of oversight of our senior homes and our facilities, right? So that's what Abbott wants. When we talked to ERCOT, for example, when we spoke with ERCOT early on, what they said when they monitored these energy producers or these suppliers, right, that they do spot checks to see if they're weatherized or if they have the power that they need to get the electricity out. So my husband's a City of Dallas worker. He's like, that is government talk for we don't do crap. A spot check, as you know, is just just a BS term that we kind of drive by and check to see if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that's it. Remember, when the town of West blew up, Greg Abbott, they asked him, why did the town of West blow up? You know, they had the fertilizer there stacked in the building. They pretty much blew up the whole town. And what Abbott said is, you know, we don't have the inspectors in this state. People could just drive by and check out to see if they're safe. And if they're not safe, report it to the state. This is what they have brought to us, is that we have to police each other with only police our private, you know, companies, but we're limited because we're private citizens. And so there's a lot to undo in all of this, But number one, what they're wanting to get us to believe is, oh, we're Texans, we're rugged, we can deal with each other. Government's, we're supposed to sink or swim, and government doesn't have a role in this. That's BS. Government is about protecting the general welfare, which is what we are supposed to be doing. And we as government completely failed our people, and we got to do better. And so, I thank you all for having us out. And I know Jasmin and Victoria have some more to share, but I think number one, we have to go back to making sure that we're protecting our most vulnerable and that we are holding the private sector accountable. This, individual ruggedism BS, when you're a senior citizen and you have limited resources, or when you're just a family who's living paycheck to paycheck, you can't just go out and buy something or, hope the rent gets paid on its own. We got to step in, and that's what we're here to do, is to fight for the family. So thank you for allowing me to be here, and I'm going to stick around if you all have any questions that I'm sure Jasmin or Victoria's on now. If Victoria wants to add a little bit about her legislation. Victoria, are you here?
Yep.
Hi, everybody.
Good morning, Representative. How are you? Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for organizing this, and Representative Ramos is spot on with what she said. Right now, I know for lots of our constituents and folks all across Texas, so many of the legislators, we've been focusing on addressing constituent calls, constituent emails, all while our teams as well. A lot of our team is in Austin right now, has gone, some days they don't have water, some days they don't have power. And so I just want to thank you all for everything that you're doing to help folks, whether it's getting them water, getting them food, directing folks. Please don't hesitate to continue to direct folks to our office. We want to continue to do everything that we can to help folks in this time of need. There is right now at 11 o'clock, in case y'all don't know, y'all may want to spread the word, the city of Dallas is going to have at Harry Stone a water distribution from 11 to 2 or until the water runs out. And Councilwoman Blackman has that on her page. We put it on our page. So if y'all can help spread the word about that. And so that's going to target sort of like the Casa Linda, or not the Casa Linda, sort of the Casa View area along 635. So if y'all can please help spread the word on that. I know that we've been all, as our colleagues have been, on the phones with local and statewide emergency response officials to try to get as quickly the information that we get out. We also try to make sure and that it is, and we encourage you as you're sharing information also to share it from like government agency websites preferably, or the news, which typically checks. There were some spam phone numbers circulating that FEMA was going to pay for hotels. Like as soon as we heard about that and somebody asked me to share it, we started checking, and FEMA said it wasn't true. And so true factual information, especially during this time, is really, really important. There's price gouging. The Attorney General can prosecute some of these cases. I believe Ana Maria Ramos has shared some of that information. We want to continue to share that. So if you're seeing hotels, and that was legislation that was drafted by Representative Diego Bernal after the Hurricane Harvey incident. So if there's travel, lodging, if y'all see high gas prices, things that are extremely, significantly over what the norm market rate is, please report that right away so that those cases can be, folks shouldn't be taking advantage of our community in this really, really dire time. So I'm happy to talk. I know this was a legislative preview, so I'm happy to do just like a quick dive into some of the things that we're working on. I feel like our Dallas delegation did really, really well with respect to the committee assignments that we got. There are significant issues that the legislature is going to be facing. Certainly, in addition to this ERCOT issue and there is a hearing. Did you mention, Rep. Ramos, a hearing next Thursday? Okay, so there is a hearing next, the 25th. It's a joint committee hearing from the State Affairs as well as the Energy Committee, where they're going to be investigating the ERCOT. And so there's an opportunity for the public to submit public comment. We'll post a link here in a minute as soon as I get off. To the extent that you can spread the word, this is an opportunity. Testimony is so important whenever legislation is being decided whether it's going to pass or not. And so to the extent that you can submit public comment and share and ask others to submit public comment on their views on ERCOT and other information, please submit that prior to the hearing if you can. So I was elected back in 2016, thanks to the help of so many of you that are on this video, on this Zoom call, and we're very, very grateful. We were, thankful to be reelected. This is my third session, and I guess when we were elected back in 2016 was when Trump was first elected in office, and so the change that we've been seeing over the last 4 years has been really, really significant, not just at the national level, but here at the state level. So we have a really just phenomenal delegation. The other two reps that you have on this call right now are doing a wonderful job. Rep. Jasmin Crockett just hit the ground running once she was elected, even before she got elected, and has been a really vocal champion for her district, as has Representative Ana Maria Ramos. All of the work and her experience has really shined a light on issues that are really, really important. I serve currently as the Democratic co-chair of our Dallas area legislative delegation, and we have majority of the county representatives are Democratic representatives at this moment, and we know that redistricting is right around the corner later on this year, which I'll touch on shortly. And I also was really honored to be appointed by the speaker as the chair of the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee. It's last session we raised the issue of not having enough women chairs, we had 0 Latina chairs in the Texas House of Representatives. Prior to that, it was Representative Carol Alvarado that's now serving in the Senate. And so equity and diversity in the chairmanships and in the committee appointments are something that we feel like could have been improved. And so there has been significant progress this session. We still have a lot more work, a lot more further way to go. So I'm just really, really honored about that appointment. I know that the responsibility is big. As a committee chair, we have the opportunity to determine which bills are going to have a hearing in our committee, as well as which bills we call up for a vote, which bills we pass out of committee. One thing that for me is really, really important is that we pass bipartisan legislation. Bless you. I don't want to have legislation that is skewed one way or another. I want to make sure that as we have legislation that comes to the floor, that has been thoughtfully vetted, that we've had testimony from the community on these significant issues, and that it means something, especially now when our time is so limited and we want to address the really big critical issues facing our state, like COVID, Medicaid expansion, access to healthcare, making sure we take care of our schools and our teachers, and so many other issues. I guess some inside baseball for y'all is that, there's word that what may be passed may be really, but it's not going to be easy to pass a bill. And it's not easy to pass a bill, period, but especially this session when we have really big budget issues that we have to address as well as redistricting and other things. In order for bills to pass, they need to be really meaningful for the state, ideally. So I also was appointed to serve as the vice chair of the General Investigating Committee, as well as a member of the Human Services Committee. Those two committees address different things. The General Investigating Committee can address things like sexual assault or sexual harassment complaints within the legislature, among other things. The Human Services Committee, we look at things dealing with Medicaid, with healthcare, with domestic violence, sexual assault, as well as the Department of Family Protective Services, foster care, things like that. And so I love all of the committees that I was appointed to serve on, and just know that we all are working very hard every day to try to make sure that that we represent our districts well. With respect to I'll just touch on briefly with respect to the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee, some of the things that we are focusing on is, one, we're looking at the school to prison pipeline. looking at the disproportionate impact on students of color, trying to look at what diversion programs we have, what's working, what's not working, so that we can make sure that we direct more of our kids to college or trade schools, because we know that the economic prosperity of Texas is reliant on the education of our kids. And so as many of those kids as we can direct to higher education or trade and keep them in the workforce is something that we're going to focus on. With respect to the family issues component of the committee, portion of purview of the committee, I also practice family law among other areas of law, and Rep. Ana Maria Ramos is on the committee. So with her, me, and several of the other folks that are on the committee, just know that we want to make sure that we do everything that we can to protect families, that the family code is fair and equitable for families that go before our family courts. And the other big thing that I've been working a lot on is the significant rise that we've seen in domestic violence during the pandemic, especially here in Dallas. There was a Dallas Morning News article based on a study that UT Dallas, my alma mater, did that showed during the pandemic the significant increase. And the impact of that is that so many women, majority women, who were in their homes and could not leave during the pandemic because either they didn't have work or because the family violence shelters were full, or because they just could not escape their perpetrator during this time because he was at home too. There was a real impact on families in our area. So we want to make sure that our family violence shelters, our rape crisis centers still have all the funds that they need in this upcoming budget, where other agencies, other programs may unfortunately be cut. We want to make sure that those are that they are protected. And I'm not sure if y'all saw the news as well. There have been 2 family violence shelters during this ice storm that have been disrupted. One particular in our area that we're working closely with the family place, because they had a shelter in Mesquite, and they're private shelters so that individuals don't know where they live. Had the pipes burst, and then they moved 123 families to a church who graciously opened up their arms, and then the pipes burst there. So they're in the process of moving. So to the extent that you can donate to the family place and also Genesis Women's Shelter, please do. I think right now their number one need is contributions in order to be able to move these families. So we're trying to help them find housing for 10 weeks in or near our area. And so we're hopeful that there are several options for these families, but I just ask you to sort of keep them in, close to your heart and pray for them, because these kids and families who are going through a really tough time already, to have their lives disrupted like this. And I know, like so many others, it's just compounds sometimes the emotional and the trauma that they are already dealing with. So those are some of the things. I know there's a lot more that I could talk about, but I don't want to take much of your time. So with that, I'll happy to turn it over to my colleague, Representative Jasmin Crockett.
Good morning. And for those of you that don't know, Rep. Neave is now newly engaged, and so I'm excited about that for her as well. So many congrats on top of kind of everything else that she does as a rock star. So I'm just excited to be on the same hall as her in the Capitol. And she also came a lot more prepared than me. I've been listening to our emergency briefing as well as listening in here. So let me give you an idea of what it's like to be a freshman in Austin in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of kind of the footing of an insurrection, in the midst of racial uprisings, in the midst of a winter storm. It's a lot to say the least. But as many of you know, my background is in criminal defense work and civil rights work. And so thus far, I have filed approximately 25 bills. Those bills, there's a lot of bills that are surrounding criminal justice and kind of just being smarter on criminal justice, and making sure that we are not further harming those that are coming from, say, a poor background or a lower socioeconomic struggle. And so just kind of being smart. So it's all across the board on my criminal justice. One of the major bills that I'm about to file that I'm still reading through has to do with giving amnesty of sorts to domestic violence victims. So basically, a lot of times, if someone has a warrant for tickets because they've been able to pay those warrants, or if they've got some misdemeanor warrant of some sort, then they may not call the police. And so it took a lot of fighting with Ledge Council to get this done. But that's a bill that I'm still trying to make sure that they've written up correctly. But I think that it would do so much good in so many areas for women to know that even if they do have some sort of issue, they can go ahead and call, or men, they know that they can call and they know that they won't necessarily go to jail. And that's power that is being taken away from their abuser. In addition to that, so I've got criminal justice bills, I've got a number of voting bills, I've got police reform bills, and then I also was just getting started on my green bills. So I am the newly elected treasurer of our environmental caucus that only started this year. And so one of the bills that our chairwoman, Chairwoman Zwiener, shared with me was a bill that had been filed by my predecessor, Eric Johnson. And this bill actually now was kind of seeing some traction. I had not filed that bill. I had the draft in my possession because there were some things that I wanted to do to just give it a little bit more teeth. This particular bill would require that basically there be experts that report to all of our major agencies about what climate change is looking like, right? So it's basically bringing science to the ledge and give those agencies an opportunity to ask for money based upon the science that's kind of put before them. But there were no mandates, there was no kind of action component. It was more of an informational bill. So I hadn't previously filed it. And then obviously we ended up with the issue that we're suffering from now. And so, you know, it's kind of like the worst storm coming together. We have a ledge that has not believed in climate change. We also have a ledge that, as far as I'm concerned, played Russian roulette with people's lives. You know, we talked to ERCOT. They did a briefing with us on Tuesday. And basically they said, well, it just got too cold. And I explained to them that I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. We've endured way colder circumstances. And so they said, well, it's unprecedented. I'm like, it may be unprecedented in Texas, but it's not unprecedented. Like, the technology exists so that people can actually be warm. And I don't know how we can look at ourselves and call ourselves leaders when it comes to the energy sector, and we can't make sure that our own Texans are kept warm when they need heat the most. That doesn't make sense. And so I'm not okay with the explanations that have been given, but sadly enough, and I'm sure in the pamphlet that's been provided by Representative Hodge, I'm sure that it lays out that a lot of times we actually submit for drafts through Ledge Council. Some of my criminal drafts, I could probably draft them myself, but you don't want to attract points of order. So I'm trying to minimize the drama. They say that there's a million ways to kill a bill and only one way to get one passed. So I'm trying to minimize some of the resistance on some of my bills. And so I've been going through Ledge Council. Well, because of everything that we're going through with the pandemic, we were told by the speaker that we needed to get our drafts in by Friday. So here it is that we end up really started learning. For me, I didn't know who ERCOT was. And so, you know, we've all, I'm sure, been trying to get a crash course in all of this. And that only started as of like Monday or Tuesday. So our drafts deadline has been pushed back until Wednesday, I believe. And so we've got until Wednesday to figure something out. So I'm kind of stressed, but I do have 26 interns in my office. I have about 10 interns that actually rotate in and out of the Capitol. And then I have another 16 that are virtual. So on Monday, we are having a powwow. My interns have been researching this entire time because they are going to propose legislative ideas for me. I do know that one of my issues had to do with notice. I do believe that more people probably would have decided potentially to leave, which would have reduced the demand on the grid overall, if they had realized that this was coming. The reality is that we were told that the plane was going down. It was just a matter of the fact that the people didn't know. And so I don't think that we should be facing something so significant and we don't notify the people. That's not a fix, but I believe that we need to work on our transparency. I believe that we need to give people information to make decisions about themselves and for their families. Obviously, those that maybe were suffering from medical conditions of some sort, they may have sought to relocate them somewhere that would have been safer while it was still safe to get out of Texas. So I have submitted for a bill that would basically do something similar to what an Amber Alert does, is alert, everyone in the state of Texas, this is what's going on. We've got this declaration, and this is kind of what we expect to happen. So you need to basically take cover, or you need to leave, or, those kinds of things. So that is a bill that I've submitted for. I don't know how much you guys understand, and I can't say that we understand the most, but essentially ERCOT is our grid. I think we've all kind of determined that part. And then for most of us in the Dallas area, Encore is who delivers this power. And so essentially ERCOT said, listen, if you don't take power off, the grid will fail. I take issue with the fact that we did not keep up with the maintenance on the grid. I take issue with the fact that the overall infrastructure with the grid had not been expanded upon. The reality is that Texas may be one of the fastest growing states in this country. We are anticipated to pick up 3 US congressional seats, if that gives you any idea of how much Texas is growing. And so the way that I've explained it to so many people, it's like, here it is, you've got this 2-seater car, but now your wife is pregnant with twins. Are you going to upgrade to the minivan, or are you going to go ahead and keep it with the 2-seater and hope that everybody fits in? So we had so many things that were going wrong. From the infrastructure overall was failing. Obviously, we had a great candidate when it came to the Railroad Commission, but sadly enough, she didn't make it. The regulations as it relates to those gas lines and how close they are to the surface made them more susceptible to freezing. Right now, there is this conversation seemingly that's being put out there where there's the intent to kind of create this war between coal and oil and gas versus renewable energy, and really trying to blame kind of renewable energy. And I just want to make sure that you guys know that that's false. And honestly, everything about me is diversity. I believe that diversity fixes so many of our problems. And honestly, I don't feel any different when it comes to our energy dilemma. The more diverse we are when it comes to energy overall, then the less susceptible we are if 1 or 2 of those areas fails. It's kind of like just having a backup for a backup. And so I did ask ERCOT point blank, I'm like, considering the fact that you just couldn't meet the demand that was being made, would it have been better if we had been pushing a more aggressive agenda as it relates to solar? Because if there were more homes that were operating on solar, then that means that there's less reliance upon whatever it is that you need to pump into the home. I said, or do we need to go back to the national grid? So there's a lot of things that need to be done, sadly enough. It's almost like we're in this sinking ship and we don't know which holes we can plug to kind of get us to the point that we don't end up here. But the reality is that, we saw this in 2011. And so I am relying on so many of our senior members, such as Representative Anchia, to really hopefully lead the charge on some of these things. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to do my part, but it is tough to get caught up to speed. So I want to let you guys know that we are here for you. I want you to also know that I never think that I'm too smart for anything. And so if you have suggestions, doesn't matter if you're in my district or not, please feel free to call us, because we can't be put in this situation again. And sadly enough, while we've been given assurances that our peakers perform where they need to perform when it's high temperatures, I don't really know that I really want to take that risk right now. And we know how hot our summers can get. And so, you know, I want to make sure that we are preventing this when it's hot as well as when it's cold. And I wasn't quite satisfied with many of the answers that I got, but we've got to work on winterization, requiring winterization, because as Representative Ana Maria spoke to you about the fact that they didn't require it, right? And so we've got to get off of this kind of lackadaisical situation. Another question that I saw earlier on had to do with the price gouging. And that's related to the bills. And so as relates to the energy bills, it is my understanding that essentially, if I had to break it down in layman's terms, it's almost like we went to the black market to, not really the black market because it's usually cheaper, but basically we ran out of places to get energy. And so we got strong armed into purchasing energy for, I believe, $9,000, some kind of watt, kilowatt, some big watt. We paid about $9,000 per, because we were trying to get as much energy as we could. But once again, to put that burden on the people is problematic. I also learned that to take some of our large industries offline, they actually got paid. So there's a deal in law that says that, hey, if we need to take you off, big corporation, the state will, or I don't know if it's the state, but we'll pay you for taking you off. And ultimately, I think a lot of that cost is actually going to be passed on to the very people that still did not get energy. So not everyone's bills are going to go up, number one. It has more to do if you have a fixed rate or not. It seems like some companies are worse than others. This also deals with us kind of deregulating and using so many different retailers. So that there's no consistency to what's going to happen. We have already started talking about that. And so it's my understanding from some senior members, there may be some ways to order the refund of monies and things like that. I believe that we also need to work on legislation that will prevent anyone from being cut off for kind of that error bill is what we will call it, until we can kind of get some places. The committees that I sit on are criminal jurisprudence as well as business and industry. Business and industry is going to be overwhelmed, to say the least, and we deal with consumer issues. So price gouging issues, those things will most likely come through our committee as well. And so I am trying to listen on the ground as it relates to what's going on, as it relates to price gouging. So please, please, please make sure that you guys are reporting that stuff, because it's hard for me to formulate legislation if I don't know exactly where all the problems are. But that's something that will most likely come through our committee. As it relates to kind of on the ground right now, West Dallas has been probably hardest hit in my district. It is quite terrible what's gone on. And so luckily there have been so many amazing partners in the community that have come out. So we've had to house people. We're having issues with DHA properties because we've got roofs that have caved in. People, so they don't have roofs. There are busted pipes, and DHA has not placed them anywhere. And so we're really trying to find out from the feds, like, what are you guys going to do? Because that's a federally subsidized housing situation. We do have the major disaster declaration that has just been signed by our president. On the briefing that was going on that I was trying to listen to at the same time, it says that as relates to that declaration, there are a total of 77 counties that have been approved for individual benefits, so to speak. So that means that individuals will be able to directly apply. I know people had questions about FEMA and what FEMA was doing, And I'm sure you guys have heard of like FEMA vouchers and things like that, but we did not have the major disaster declaration that would have opened the floodgates to some of those benefits. And so those floodgates are now opening. So we will be able to do a lot more. I'm just asking that we all continue with our very neighborly spirit. Sadly enough, government is moving very, very slowly. But those of you in the community have moved very, very fast to help out your neighbors. And honestly, we probably would have a lot more loss of life if it wasn't for just truly good-hearted people helping each other out. So I do want to thank you for anything that you've done during this very difficult time. And I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you, guys.
May I just take a couple of seconds to really thank the representatives, but I think I owe an explanation to the club members. When I put together the meeting for today, I had asked that each representative submit their favorite bill so that we could get an understanding of the bill and you all could discuss that. We could discuss it with you. Fortunately enough, I did get a bill from the office of Representative Crockett. And once I got that bill, I was very eager to tell the membership about it because it was about straight party voting. Knowing how much you all are going through right now, talking to the representatives myself and talking to your staff, I realized that maybe you couldn't get a bill to me because you were going through some of the same things that we were going through, having to move some of you from Dallas to Austin, housing in 2 locations, filing deadlines for bills, short work weeks, staff overloaded. I realized you had all of those things going on, and then to add fuel to that fire, you got the weather problem. So what I did, I called and talked to Representative Neave's staff. I talked to Representative Ramos's staff and told them that rather than them trying to rush their staff to get us something, I would like for them then to give us any information that they wanted to give us as it related to the situation with our utilities, the electricity, the water, and all sorts of things like that. So I'd like to thank you guys for taking my request and recommendation on that and together putting us together a quality presentation. But for me, and I don't mean any disrespect to Representative Crockett at all, because I was very, very proud of her. Immediately my request, I got a copy of a bill, and all of us are real Democrats. So we were worried about this non-ticket, straight ticket voting. And to see that she had that bill, I was very excited about it, presented it to the committee. And unfortunately, the bill that many of us were looking forward to hearing a great deal about is the only bill we haven't heard a word about. So Representative, could you just very briefly kind of give us some points on that straight ticket voting bill?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. I just know that we're all dealing with kind of the present situation. So one of the very first bills that I wanted to file was the straight party ticket voting. As someone who was out campaigning during the first ballot that did not have straight party ticket voting, I knew that there was going to be mass confusion. So many of my constituency were like, oh, baby, if you're a Democrat, I'm voting for you, or, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's no more straight party ticket voting now. And so they didn't understand. And I was saying, you're going to have to go down the entire ballot. And depending on where you are, some of those ballots are really long. And so, dealing with COVID and the potential for long lines on top of people potentially having to go all the way down a very long ballot, it just seemingly smelled of disenfranchising Black and Brown communities more so than other areas. And I thought we definitely need to make sure that if somebody wants to vote this way, they have that opportunity. And we have been doing it for so long. I think that that's the other thing. When we looked at the majority of our voters, so many of our voters are over 65. I think when we looked in my district, maybe about 60% of the voters were 65 or older. and they were consistent voters that had been voting one way all this time. And so I thought that it was really important. That was, I want to say, one of the first bills that I filed, if not the very first bill, because I thought it was really important. I've got vote by mail bills. I've got, automatic, I don't have automatic voter registration, but same day voter registration. I've got online voter registration. A lot of my bills do have a bit of a technical point, trying to kind of get our technology up and going. I will be filing for some bills as well as it relates to technology in the courtrooms, just because there's so much uncertainty with COVID, and the reality is that, once again, we weren't prepared for COVID. I think that the last thing that we need to do is make anything difficult when it comes to getting people to the ballot box. And I personally feel like it was a target because of the way that our appellate courts have been flipping. And right now we're having to watch legislation because they are attempting to essentially gerrymander our appellate courts as well, and stretch those districts out so that our Democrats will not be elected to our appellate courts. So I've had appellate justices calling me about that issue as well. So sadly enough, we are fighting so many things, but I am pushing very, very hard and aggressively for a number of reforms as it relates to voting in general. But I just thought that it led to mass confusion. It was only frustrating for those that did not know of the change, and that it was truly targeted at Democrats.
And I'd like to add, Jasmin, I'd like to add that even though it was a challenge, people were very creative. The feds, especially, I want to thank them at the polls. The feds created a post-it, or you probably are familiar, some of you probably participated in the lit stick. At our polls, that was just amazing. Not only did they go to doors, people came to the polls with that lit stick, and then we also handed it out at the polls, maintaining distance. But the bill that Jasmin filed, I want to make sure, like you said, there's a war on many fronts, and you all know we're limited in time that we have, in session. So not only is it the pandemic, and not only is it making sure we sustain education funding, not only is it we need insurance, but we also have the redistricting piece, right? So we're, the census numbers coming in, the apportionment, we also have all of that coming. So there is a lot of work to do. It is there. The reality is, and I know somebody posted, well, Republicans are, in charge. We still need to fight. Of course we do. That's the whole point. We're there, is to fight. But that is besides the point. We got to be real. Yes, we're fighting. And we need to have our people even more so engaged. We cannot, in Spanish, we can't, you would say, no nos podemos dar por vencidos. We can't give up. That's why we're there fighting. But we need you all to also join us. And you've already doing it, but we got to step it up a notch. For example, Crockett's bill, Representative Crockett's bill is going to go to a committee that is chaired by Briscoe Cain. Now, Briscoe Cain, if you've all heard of, this is the guy who flew to go fight for Trump, I guess, to Philadelphia to testify of how we needed to overturn those elections. This is the guy who's chairing the elections committee. This guy he filed voter suppression bills last time that didn't get through. For whatever reason, our new speaker thought he would be great to now chair the committee when he was the king of filing voter suppression bills. Now he's chairing the election committee. So, fortunately, Jessica Gonzalez, who many of you all know, Representative Gonzalez, is in our Oak Cliff area, so she's the vice chair. But ultimately, Briscoe's the one that's calling the shots. And so, that is why we need you all to continue to make those calls, to get on the Texas Legislative online website, to start doing those alerts, to find out how you can go testify or organize, write those letters, write those emails, make those calls to say, hey, we want to see Jasmin's bill have a committee hearing at least. There's a lot more our people, you all, can continue to do to be part of this process, because we are, it's a war. It is no doubt a war. It's a war for the people against the power that has gotten us to where we're at today. So we got to continue to now bring it up another notch. You know, we were able to go out there and vote and you know, even overcome the single ticket, you know, the single member, the straight party ticket, I'm sorry. We were able to overcome that, but we can't lose sight of the way they're going to try to gerrymander those districts even more. They're going to try to advance more voter suppression. I mean, it's all hands on deck, and we got to be creative and think of other ways that we can continue to advocate for these policies.
Thank you, Representative. I don't know if Ms. Hodge, if I answered your question. I see that Monica had a question, so I was going to move on, but I didn't want to move on unless someone had some additional questions about that bill or any other bill that we've discussed, really. I know that there was a question about the grid.
No, I thank you very, very, very much. I really appreciate you guys working together that way. You know, that's called friend ride or die, got your back. I appreciate the explanation, because I came to the conclusion on yesterday to call the two of you and ask you to talk about the weather situation, because I thought I had Representative Crockett pretty well locked in for the ballot information. And I only learned yesterday, after I had asked you guys to do the weather update, I only learned yesterday that that was what Representative Crockett may have been doing as well. And I didn't have an opportunity to let anybody know that we may not hear about the bill today. So I thank all of you for coming together, making the whole thing work. And I am not the most computer smart girl in the world, but you know what? The president of this committee, he's extremely smart with this computer. So what I'd like to do is to turn it over to him and ask him if he would help me by going to the chat room or wherever it is we need to go for the questions that the members have submitted to ask, because I would totally be lost trying to operate the computer for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Representative Hodge and Vice President Hodge, for kind of running us and getting us to where we are. I think this has been great so far. So just monitoring the chat, I think a few of the questions have been answered. There was one sent to me personally from Ann Schutte. I think I'm pronouncing your last name right. And Ann had a question about new discovery rules for family law cases in Texas, and that might be addressed to Representative Crockett, possibly. Ann?
It might be addressed perhaps to Representative Neave.
Okay.
For those who are not familiar, the Supreme Court has recently rolled out new mandatory disclosure requirements and other types of what we call discovery requirements in family law cases. And this is going to have an impact, a big impact on the cost to litigants, family law litigants in their cases, and retainers are already going up and so on. And that in turn, of course, is going to have a huge impact on legal aid because as work goes up, resources are stretched, and it's the same as a cut to legal aid. It will impact pro se litigants, that is to say, people who represent themselves burdened with these requirements. And so my question really is kind of twofold. Is there any kind of move afoot at the legislature to amend these rules or exempt low-income people, pro se litigants, pro bono cases, legal aid cases? And secondly, which committee would have jurisdiction over such a bill or such action? And thank you very much in advance for your answer.
Thank you, Anne. And I think that's a good question. And I'm happy to get with you afterwards also to talk more in depth about it. So the bills that all have been filed right now, and the process in the legislature in terms of how they get passed or don't get passed is that first they have to be referred to a committee after they've been filed. Sometimes they will be referred to the committee that has quote unquote jurisdiction, or it falls within the purview of the description of the committee. So a bill like that, I would think would be referred to our committee. Another potential committee it might be referred to is the Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence Committee, on which I previously served, because they deal a lot with the rules, the civil statutes, things like that. So, but I do think it should be referred if somebody has filed something yet. The bills, to my knowledge, have not been referred yet. They were supposed to be referred this week, but since the storm hit, they have not been referred. So we anticipate all the bills are going to start being referred after that. And the way that happens is the clerk goes up on the mic in the House, and it also, I don't know how they do it in the Senate, but on the House side, he'll go up and read it, and then they'll say which committee it was referred to. So they're going to start at number 1. So depending on, I think there are thousands of bills that have been filed. So they'll get to them, and as they're referred and then they're sent to the committees, then the committee chairs can determine which bills come up. So I don't know if a bill has been filed on that issue. If it has, or if you're aware of one, please let me know so we can keep an eye on it. But if not, deadlines for bills are right around the corner. Like Rep. Crockett said, we have a deadline next week to submit them for drafting with the Legislative Council attorneys. And then the filing deadline is a few weeks from now. So I'm happy to talk with you offline so we can do a little bit more research onto whether something has been filed with respect to that.
I would like to add, and thank you. I didn't, discovery for me is where the magic is in litigation, especially with family law cases. And basically, you know, and so I didn't think about the cost for the free clinics or the family law clinics. But for those of you who are unaware of discovery, for example, I practice family law, and unlike many attorneys, I don't charge. I am very selective in my clientele because they're very low income people, and I don't charge an hourly rate. I don't bill at an hourly rate. I do a flat fee. And I do a flat fee, essentially, it's about a third of what I would bill or collect if I were doing it by the hour. But you know, for me, discovery, I throw it into what I do for families, because just because you're limited income doesn't mean you should be denied justice. And I have found so much about the other person through our discovery request. You get their bank statements, you get their phone records. I recently found a client, her husband had pocketed over $300,000 in a matter of a couple of years that she didn't even know about. And so discovery is a way that I can get information about the opposing party, and which would make me a better representative for my client, because I have all the cards on the table. I kind of know what we're playing with. However, I do understand other attorneys are not like me. They don't charge. There are very few attorneys like me who charge a flat rate. Now, maybe it's not the best business. I'm never going to be a millionaire, but my clients, we've been able to do miracles by requesting discovery. And it's basically, if I'm filing a case and this person is getting divorced from husband, I can ask husband for all of this stuff, and he has to give it to me in 30 days. He has to give me this stuff. If not, we go back to court. So it can be expensive when you're billing by the hour. So it is something I think that we should explore. And you know, speaking with Representative Neave, it may not come into our committee, but it's also a great opportunity to obtain justice, where the reason I started doing a flat fee is because I would go into court without any discovery, without any tools to defend my client. Now with discovery being mandatory, I can see it's really going to help a lot of people, because when they go to court now, they will actually have tools to go in and fight. So, you know, it's the sword, there's two sides to the issue, but, you know, it is something and that we should discuss, because I understand, yeah, the family law, legal aid and stuff, there probably will be some issues, but I got to tell you, man, we've been able to do some amazing things with discovery. So, you know, you will touch base and talk to Victoria as well, but you know, it's not such a bad thing, but I don't bill by the hour, and so I'm not coming from that space. I'm coming from the space of getting justice to low-income clients. So thank you for bringing that up.
A good perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm going to be meeting with the Texas Family Law Foundation, which often testifies before the committee. They typically carry and come advocate for a lot of the bills at the family law attorney. So I'll talk to them about it as well.
Well, very good. Thank you so much. I know that Legal Aid, every session, the Equal Access to Justice Commission is down there trying to get funding for legal aid. And I'm just quite alarmed that this could have the effect of a backdoor, essentially reduction in their resources by increasing their costs.
Thank you for bringing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for answering that. Now, I did have a question that hopefully, while I'm asking that, if you want to post some additional questions in the chat for the representatives. The question I had is first, thank you for submitting all these bills. What can we as citizens do to help advocate for bills that have been filed, or at what stage does it help if constituents come down to Austin, protest, picket, march? What is the best way for us as citizens and Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats to advocate for bills that you've put forth?
So I'm happy to give perspective on that. And I think one of the things that we look for in our so many emails, phone calls, social media messages that we get is I look to see if it's from a constituent. You know, if I'm hearing from somebody in another part of the state that about an issue that's me personally is lower on my priority in terms of if I'm hearing directly from somebody in our own area that is raising a concern about a certain issue. So every legislator is different, and certainly doesn't, it also depends on the issue. And so I think what Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats can do, if there's particular issues that we care about, we have to organize statewide. If it's a bill, let's say that a bill is coming before a committee for a hearing, and Rep. Ramos said you can track the bills to see when they're moving, when have they been referred, when has a hearing been set, and then you look at who's on that committee. And then once you look at who's on that committee, if it's somebody from Houston or a rural area, you then try to get their constituents to contact them directly. You can contact a member on a committee and express their concerns, but they may or may not value what we have to say in Dallas versus their own constituents in like East Texas or West Texas. So that's just sort of like maybe a bigger perspective strategy in terms of how to get bills passed. One of the things that I do whenever I lay out a bill before committee, I try to present to them packets based on how my bill would impact their district directly. It's not easy to do that and it takes a lot of work, but that has been useful for me in getting, being successful with getting my bills passed. So that would be a suggested strategy. I know it's a little bit more work, but if you can get direct constituents to contact those members directly, we'll go a lot further.
And I'd like to add what Representative Neave said. In addition to that, and our office would be more than happy to work with you all to run through a little session on how to track those bills. It's to get online and be able to kind of put in your buzzword, or so that you can receive those alerts when a bill has a hearing on that. And I would encourage you all to be part of the process and go to do the hearings. Now, there's still, I'm not sure if we were able to answer whether it's going to be virtual or in person. I don't know, Victoria, do you know if they're going to be able to testify virtually?
So one, it's going to depend on the committee chair, and the virtual testimony is for invited testimony from the rules. So if it's on a particular issue and there is like organization or certain experts or somebody who's been impacted, it would be up to the chair of the committee to make that invitation. Otherwise, folks will have to come in person.
Okay, so if that's the case, then we would have I'm sorry, go ahead, Victoria.
I was going to say, except there's that new rule where I just posted the link, for example, for the ERCOT, where you can submit written testimony that is going to be logged in for each bill that has a hearing. So if you can, so if you can't make it, you can still submit that written comment, which will be taken into consideration by the committees.
Thank you. And the reason, and so even if, and it's a bit cumbersome, but we are only 3 hours away from Austin, and I know it's 3 hours is still a lot. We do the travel every weekend, but if it is a bill, please, if you can show up, I can guarantee you the other side, they're showing up. they're showing up to testify about whatever bills and being there. So when I make a decision, when I'm sitting on the committee and I'm making decisions, I'm in the Natural Resources Committee. Fortunately, I'm on it again. And even though, people would come and testify and they're not my constituents, it's a farmer who is scared they're going to have no more water because the private sector took it all out of their wells. Like, I care. Like, that is something that is going to affect my vote. But showing up and speaking about it, I can tell you it's not only helpful for your bill or for your side. What they do is they give us a book and they lay it on our desk. And in that book, there's the bill number, there's a summary, there's how that committee voted for it. And then there is a list of witnesses, right? Who was for it and who was against it. And many times, like, you have a lot of one side and nothing on the other. And I know that those issues are stuff that affect us, but I look at that and I'm like, okay, there's nobody really against this bill. Fortunately, we're very connected in our community. So I know people may, against it, but our people couldn't come and testify. So to the extent that you can, it really does matter, because not everybody looks at that book, but I do every day that they put it on our desk. So that book lets us know who is for it, who is against it. And it also helps us as we're there fighting for you, because we have to go to the committee. It's like an actual hearing, right? We go in there and we talk about our bill, and the committee chair, the people who are on the committee, ask us questions. I got to tell you, when I laid my bill out about confiscating the guns from individuals who were charged with domestic abuse, like, they were already charged with domestic abuse. There's nothing in the rules that really gets the guns from them. They're supposed to turn over their guns, but there's nothing to really define how that's supposed to happen. As I'm laying this bill, the room is full of these, gun obsessed people packed with their guns in that committee hearing, and they have their assault rifles and they have all their guns, and I'm there pleading for women who've been abused and men to take away the guns from their abuser. And there were very few people, even though, we reached out or whatever, and we had some people there, but there was a lot more of those gun people there than our people. And so, it does help us when we're making that argument on why we need to support whatever legislation. If all of these rural people who maybe have one Walmart in town and have nothing to do show up, and our people, don't, it makes it's a tougher argument. And so it really would help us if you all, would take the time, whatever bill it is. It doesn't have to be all of them, but be part of it. And even if you don't know what to say, I've seen people just stand there and say, I'm against this because it just feels wrong, blah, blah, blah. But what's beautiful about that is they're part of the process. They're getting better and they're learning about it. And so please don't be scared. Like, I've never done this before. It's too formal. It's not for me. That's BS. That's what they want us to think. It's your Texas House. It's your Texas Capitol. Be part of the process. Stumble, figure it out, learn it so that you can bring others along. And that's how we're going to dismantle this crazy system they created. So please join us in the fight. Get to the Capitol, testify, say whatever the hell you want to say about that bill. There's no, whatever, no rules in terms of your opinion about that bill, to be part of the process, and let's bring everybody along. Thank you.
Hey, Brian. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Brian, I just wanted to answer Monica's question because she asked it a while ago. She was asking what the answer was as you to going back on the national grid. They basically talked in circles. They didn't answer my question. And I actually had other senior members texting me, and one even came to talk to me and was like, you took them to town and they ran, pretty much. So there was no answer given. But one of the great things, one of the conversations I had yesterday is I'll be talking to a guy that was an engineer at ERCOT. And he's going to be one of the people that is going to try to help me with some legislation, along with a number of lawyers that actually work in energy regulation stuff. So I've got a call set up with them for some advice. I don't know what it looks like for us to go back on the national grid. The thing about going back on the national grid is then we end up with federal regulation. And that's the part that we're kind of seeking. But ultimately, if we end up coming up with actual regulation here in the state of Texas, I don't think that it's an end all be all. What many people don't know is that out in West Texas, out in El Paso, they were fine. El Paso was just fine. El Paso is not a part of our grid. And so there are ways to do this. I just think that the way that we've done it is not correct. So I think that our answers are in regulations that include taking care of our generation, not just letting private corporations decide where they will cut corners, but instead, if you are going to plug in and be a part of what creates the entire system, then you are absolutely going to have to adhere to certain things. And then adding to the diversity, I know that the governor is pushing back because he has tried to blame green energy. But I even asked them about the fact that, because there was a lot of conversation about the fact that we did not have stored power, right? So we were literally just trying to get all this generation online. And that was like part of the problem. It's kind of like, take us back to, you know, the olden days when we had our wagons, right? Like, that's kind of how it felt. They were like, well, we were trying to get the coal, you know, and get it in there to get y'all warm, right? And so, you know, but my deal was, everything that I understand is that you can actually store energy, especially in the form of solar. So you're not having to then, you know, get it up and running, right? So there's a lot of kind of layers and levels to this. And I think that the real fix, you know, for me, all I want them to do is, for any of you that are doctors or in the medical field, when you're in the ER, they do triage, right? So you may have a bleeding leg, you may have, you know, somebody's hand that's aching them, and then you may have someone that they believe is suffering a heart attack, right? They're gonna go to the person with the heart attack. Sadly enough, right now I've got a hospital room full of problems, and all of them are truly needing attention. But my biggest issue right now is that I don't know where the heart attack is. I don't know where that one thing is that actually, if at least that one thing survives, then we at least have some way of kind of moving forward. And that's the part about this entire process has been very frustrating. And the senior members on this call can probably tell you their best estimation, but I think we now have walked into yet another special session, which we were already headed towards a number of special sessions. So I think that this one is going to be added, because the reality is that we don't really have anyone who has subject matter expertise in this area in the House, except for maybe Rosenthal. I think background wise, Rosenthal is an engineer of sorts. And so I'll be interested to look at some of his legislation. And then we've got senior members that have just kind of been there and kind of dealt with the fights before, that will be able to contribute. But honestly, we need more time. And the reality is that we only meet once every 2 years. And that's only like furthering the delay in getting somewhere, because we can't wait another session before we begin to fix on the problems. There's a lot that can happen in the next 2 years.
Yes, and I'd like to encourage everybody to get on the ERCOT website, because it's not, if you look at the board of directors, I think the vice chair and the chair are not even Texas residents. They have an executive board who makes their decisions. And the reality is they're all industry insiders, former, you know, VP of Encore. They're all energy insiders. And so we're asking them to regulate this agency. It's a nonprofit agency that manages the grid, right? So we're asking this agency consisting of insiders to police themselves. And that is something that we created. And they're overseen by the Public Utility Commission, whose 3 commissioners are appointed by Abbott. So Abbott's commissioners also have the oversight, and the Texas Ledge, who's a majority Republican, has oversight of ERCOT, and ERCOT is made up of all of these people who are industry insiders. What could possibly go wrong with a setup like that? Well, we just saw everything could go wrong. And so beyond ERCOT, it's the Public Utility Commission. And beyond that, it is straight up Abbott. I mean, they and the Republican Party, they created this system. So we really have to go back and look at dismantling, dissecting, and really, you know, look at all of this executive board. And it was an absolute failure from the government and from the government, you know, the powers that be to our Texas residents. And so we need to look beyond ERCOT and really do some more digging. And it really also goes back to the Public Utility Commission. And the worst thing is they also oversee water. And so, you know, the Public Utility Commission plays a huge role in this, and we haven't spoken enough about what they're doing and their absolute failures. Again, that is a direct link because they're all appointed by Abbott. So there's a lot of questions, and we need to have a lot of conversations and to see, you know, as Representative Crockett said, to really dissect this, learn more about this, and make sure that we all, you know, hold these institutions, entities, individuals, and Abbott accountable.
Thank you, Representative. Let me ask Brian. Brian, do we have any more questions?
I did see one that was listed up earlier from one of our members, Eddie Morgan, about what is the status of redistricting right now, and what is the next step in that, and how do you think it will impact our congressional districts 5, 32, and so forth? Any thoughts on that?
So I'll jump in really quickly just because I'm sure that the other two reps have a little bit more experience. The most recent information that we got is that we're looking at getting our numbers in September.
Yeah.
That just came out maybe a week or so ago that we were told that. So legally, my understanding is that legally, we really can't deal with our state lines legally. Because really we're not supposed to deal with our state lines unless we get those numbers and we start working on it during the regular session. The plain language is that you deal with our lines in the next regular session, which means that technically, legally, we should not be redrawing our state lines until 2023 if we're going to get our numbers in September, because the LRB is not able to draw those lines unless they're basically finishers. So if we started working and for some reason session ended, we weren't able to finish, then they're finishers. Something tells me, considering what we saw with the trial of Trump, you know, sometimes people determine that laws are optional for them, right? Especially if it doesn't work out for them. So we'll see what the decision is on that. But as far as congressional lines, we don't have the same impediments, but now time is going to be of the essence. When you think about it, if we're not going to get our numbers maybe until September, and then filing deadline is December, while on a congressional level, you don't have to live in that district to run in that area, it still makes it very difficult for a person to even kind of plan out and start really getting their campaign done, because you'll start voting in that primary in February. The Senate has already been conducting hearings as it relates to redistricting, and there are some formulas and numbers that they are kind of allowed to use and play with in the interim. And so, you know, obviously there's maps that are already being drawn, and a member of the Senate told me with a smile on his face, yeah, I said, you know, you realize that the only reason we're getting new seats is because the urban areas are growing, right? And he was like, yep, but we get to draw the lines. And so they're going to be drawn all the way across the state. I mean, he told me. So I'm like, you know, so I mean, he told me their intent is to definitely make sure that those 3 pickups are Republican pickups, even though we know that the growth has really been in our urban areas. So I anticipate we're going to deal with some packing, where they're going to try to pack, you know, those Democratic congressional districts, and we'll have kind of all over crazy lines. And so I'm hoping that the Biden administration does us a solid and puts us in a situation as it relates to kind of clearing issues.
Okay, thank you. That's a good update. So as we talk about federal legislation impacting Texas, we did have a question that popped up a little earlier about would one of our representatives like to comment on how the Federal Equality Act, HR 4, might help the LGBT community in Texas? And Susie, asking that question, if you wanted to elaborate on that more, feel free to.
I was just curious. I mean, I know that federal law supersedes state law. So is this a possible remedy to some of the really awful legislation that the Republicans seem to prioritize over the things that really should be prioritized at a state level?
I don't know.
Jasmin, do you want to answer that as a civil rights attorney?
No, literally, I was like just looking for HR 4. I've been so busy trying to keep up with state legislation. So I'm not familiar with it. If anyone is, then please speak on it. Otherwise, can you give me a quick summary?
But excuse me, please, I hate to interrupt. And Susie, I personally, I think that's a great question. I really do. I think it also deserves an answer. However, I think we have these representatives at a disadvantage. They came to talk about Texas law and Texas legislation. A lot of times, I'm quite sure they don't even pay attention to much of the legislation that's going on in Washington. Whether we all know this or not, these people have had a hell of a 2 months on this job. We are extremely lucky. They all three took the time to be here with us this morning. They've got the same problems we do: water problems, electricity, filing bills, deadline for bills. So I'd like for us to be as fair to them as we can be. We elected them to represent Texas. Let's let them do that. And if we need anything from the Congress, let's talk to our congressional people on that. Brian, do we have any more questions?
I'd like to add to that, if you all don't mind. Susie, you're absolutely right in terms of I think, thank God, and I know we all feel this way, that we do have a Democrat at the federal level, that Trump is no longer there, because that in all reality is our safeguard from these crazy Republican discriminatory bills that we have here in the state, right? So even if you read the Texas Constitution, it is a complete violation of our own Texas Constitution and our own Bill of Rights, any discriminatory practice that we have. However, that doesn't stop them from advancing discriminatory legislation. So our saving grace is our remedies, of course, is the court, but also the federal level. And so this is where the court system, right? The three equal branches and all of that we've learned in elementary school and in civics, is where, even though the legislature may try something crazy, we have the executive, right? And unfortunately, the executive in Texas is part of the problem. But at the federal level, with the safeguards and the history of civil rights discrimination, and how at the federal level we were able to break it apart through the states, right? We're going to have to go back to that and use our federal government. And fortunately, we have somebody who is progressive in many of those ways to help us start breaking that down, the things that we have. But, he's trying to do so much before the midterms. And so it's just to say that fortunately, we have somebody at the federal level to help protect us many times from ourselves, and to hope, the reverse is from the top down, because that's the only way we got civil rights, legislation in the country in the first place. It was from the top down. It didn't come from up here. And so from the down up, from the bottom up. So, fortunately we have that. And thanks to all of you who helped get Biden elected, right? Or all of us, we can use him, and that's our safeguard with redistricting, hopefully as much as he can. So, but great question, Susie. Thank you.
Representative, did you say that there was something in state law? Or what did I understand you to say that?
So what I said, yeah. So Texas, we write discriminatory bills all the time. The Texas legislature. So for example, in the Constitution of Lawrence versus State of Texas, I think it was overturned. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. I want to say in the 90s. That was an anti-sodomy law, or actually anti-sodomy bill that was actually a law here in the state of Texas. And that's when the police went into a same-sex couple home to stop them, and they arrested Lawrence and put him in jail. So that case had to go all the way to the Supreme Court to overturn it, because that Texas bill, the Texas law, was discriminatory. And that was in the 90s that finally got settled, that you can't police sodomy. I mean, it was ridiculous. So we know that that's kind of how history is made and how history has changed, that even though crazy stuff happens, we have to support the ACLU and entities like that, NAACP, MALDEF, who really fight for us to overturn these crazy laws that are passed all over the country, the abortion laws, right? All over the country. They are passed because you have these right-wing legislators who are violating people's rights. But we use the court system, unfortunately our Supreme Court as it is right now, but with our federal government, you use the court system, and even on Congress, we could, use those tools as the three branches of government to overturn some of this crazy legislation that's being passed across the country and historically has been, but we've been able to make progress, and that's the system that we're going to have to continue to use.
I'll also add that Representative Gonzalez is carrying the big non-discrimination bill this session, along with multiple organizations. She even has a study by the Perryman, which is one of the influential economists that has done a study to show the impact to Texas, the beneficial impact of implementing and passing this non-discrimination law. So I would follow that, and if you can, support that bill and make sure that we get enough testimony and all of that so we can get that passed. And I believe she has bipartisan support for it. So we're really hopeful that, she can get it passed out of the House. The Senate is where we really have to also push a lot harder to get it passed.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And a question was asked and answered by Representative Neave about where to track bills. And Representative Ramos, you mentioned earlier that you could help constituents with setting up some type of educational session about how to track bills and do things like that. Have you done that for constituents in the past, or how has that worked?
Yes, so we have our steering committee here in House District 102 based on work when I was the executive director of a nonprofit. So in our steering committee, we have different task forces. But what we've done with our steering committee is have a presentation on how to track bills, what the process is, and how to continue to be informed about those bills, right? And to continue to be engaged. And so we'd be more than happy to work with you all to have a mini class session to kind of walk through the process so that you all can see, because it's not just filing the bill and that's it. Many times we can file, 100 bills. That doesn't mean they're even going to get a hearing at the committee, right? So they could literally be sitting in the queue and nothing happened to those bills. So we do have to submit it to an agency who does draft the language for our bills. And when they draft that language, they compare with all of the other codes, the Texas Government Code, the Criminal Code, the Civil Procedure, right? They look at how it's affecting all of the other agencies and all of the other codes. So it takes a little bit to get that language back. Once we get that language back from them, then we can file that bill. Now, when we file that bill, the speaker, they determine which committee that goes into. Now, it could sit in a committee and a chair could be like, I'm never going to hear that bill, and literally table it, like just let it sit there and never have a committee, never have a hearing on that bill. So that's part one, where we would need your help to call and say, hey, we want a hearing on that committee, that bill, put pressure on the speaker. In addition to that, so once they decide to have a hearing on that bill, and when we have witnesses come in, they could literally just have that hearing and do nothing with it. Say, oh, the clock ran out. It's the end of session. We can't hear the bill anymore. And so that happens all the time as well. After it gets out of that committee, then it has to go to the calendar committee. And so that's just on the House side. Then it has to get voted in. Well, then it has to go to the Senate. And so that's part of what we talk about is this does take a while, and then boom, we have 6 months, it's over. And it's not even 6 months really, because the first 60 days, we really can't do anything. So it's a crazy process, something that completely needs to be changed. We know that the legislature was designed this way based on when we were an agricultural state, right? We met once every 2 years. We wanted, less government intrusion, and we were agricultural state. That was our main industry. Well, we're not there anymore. Agriculture is not our main industry anymore. And, people can travel now, and before they couldn't. So we really do need to reconsider this once every 2 years thing, because it's not the state that we live in today. That was a state we lived in, 150 years ago or what have you. So we'll get there when we get our Democratic governor. We'll be able to have those conversations. But that's a long way to answer your question. But yes, we can definitely help you all in that respect as well.
I just want to quickly add, I know earlier, Brian, you asked about what we can do, and I think we've talked a lot about the House. There's a lot of bills that get past the House. They don't get started at all in the Senate. And so, I think that somehow we have a way of wiggling in the House. There needs to be a lot more that goes on in the Senate, and those senatorial districts are a lot larger. So you've got a lot more options on, people to call and things like that. I mean, there's a bill that I campaigned on. I told a story about a 17-year-old who was sent to prison for stealing candy out of the concession stand at his high school. And so it's been an issue for me for a very long time to what they call raise the age. So I did a little bit of background to figure out who had filed this bill, what the issue was, why haven't we figured this out? Texas is like one of the last 5 states to do this. And I was led to the dean of the Senate, and they said, that's where your blockade is. And I called him directly, like, this is way before I'm sworn in, like, hey, I'm coming to Austin. I've got a question. What is the problem? Like, what can I do to get you on my side? And, he told me find $40 million. And I was like, so that's going to be a problem. So, he told me his issues, and, we see it completely differently. But the reality is that I knew my bill was going to be dead in the water unless I got him what he wanted. And he has not gotten what he's wanted in all this time. And so it's continued to fail. But I did tell my constituency I was fighting for that. So I did get that bill drafted. I did get it filed. But at that point in time, I had to flip and say, let me think outside the box. Now, at least I know what his blockade is. Let me remove that blockade. And so I have a different bill in draft that hopefully I can get him on my side about because it removes kind of this money requirement that he feels like exists. But our Senate is a problem, especially with our lieutenant governor. I mean, it's like, if you think of DC and you think of what the Senate was constantly doing prior to us having the numbers, right? Because we're right there, just at 51 with VP Harris. So we get a lot of that. And so I think that it's important to make sure that we don't forget the Senate. Like, we need the Senate to be bothered and, asked to hear these bills because, we've been told some crazy low number. Rep Neave or Ana Maria, maybe you guys can help me, but it's like a low number of bills. They were like, y'all can file all these bills if you want to, but we're only doing it was a low number. I want to say 5, but I don't really remember what the number was, but it was something ridiculous considering the fact that I think my last bill number was almost 2,000 that I filed. And I still have maybe about 40 something bills in draft. And I've not even submitted for all of the nonsense with the weather storm. So, they're not trying to do bills. They've already made it clear we're in a pandemic, and the lieutenant governor said that he's not hearing that.
All right. Is that it? Okay, well, let me do this. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just really want to thank you all for your participation. I know I've said it, but I'll say it again because I really do thank you for it. I'm very proud of the committees you all have been placed on. I'm sure you will do very well. Representative Neave, I see your work is really paying off. You haven't been there for such a short time. Not only are you the chair of a major committee, but you are chair of a major committee and you are vice chair of a major committee. And I'm extremely proud of you for that. Now, let me also say to you and Representative Ramos, both of you are currently serving on a committee where I served, and that was Juvenile Justice and Family Matters. I love that committee. I served it with Representative Harold Dutton out of Houston. You guys on a very, very important committee, taking care of children and families. But one thing I'm real happy about, I know they're in good hands. So let me just say also to my president, thank you so very much for assisting me with the computer portion of this, the part that I continue to say I have no knowledge about, and I'm a little too old to try to start learning. So with that, I guess I will tell you guys what my next program is and everything under new business. So with that, again, thank you ladies for coming. We're awfully proud that you did. We enjoyed the information that you gave us. We do have that little guide to the Capitol book that we are going to be using, and hopefully I can work with them and help them to learn more. One thing I wanted them to know, Representative Ramos kept talking about those people and those agents that do those bills, and we're only going to do more. When you look in your book, the name of that group, Ledge Council. So you're going to learn some things, and they use some terms today that you all will find in that little book. And with that, that's all I have until we get to new business.
Thank you so much for the invitation. We appreciate it.
We're proud of you. You're doing good work.
Yeah, thank you so much. So that concludes our program for today. We will kind of move into the member meeting. So if the representatives want to continue to listen in and hear what's going on with the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats, feel free. But that's what we're going to move on to. So the first order of business is President's Report, and I'm going to keep that short just because we've already gone about an hour and 45 minutes, and I know everyone has some sun to enjoy and getting it done, doing some things you need to on a Saturday. So I'm just going to say, thanks to all the club members for reaching out to each other and those in our community to make sure everyone's doing okay. I've heard from a few of you with some minor issues that needed some help, so we got you some of the things that you needed with local resources. So I think that we've done a really good job with this program. I'm really excited about it, and I want to say a special thank you to Vice President Hodge for putting together this resource guide. I think that really set the tone for this specific meeting. And I think I saw Scott Haddon on the call earlier. I see Scott's image there. I did want to say that we do have a gift coming to Scott. We do have a coffee mug. We're going to fill that with a Lake Highlands or a White Rock coffee gift card for you from our local coffee shop as a thanks for doing such a great job as Vice President of Programming and of the club. So I'll get that over to you as the roads dry out. And now that I think you've gotten both your vaccine shots, that's good news too. So with that, I will conclude my report and move on to the Vice President's report from Terry Hodge.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank you members too for your participation and support with this meeting. I wish we had a little more time where we could have had maybe more questions. I know we got a little bit off track and I apologize for that, but I really thank you. Also, let me just give you an update on my calendar. So if you want to jot it down, you can start putting it on your calendar. I sort of changed the program a bit. Originally, I had talked about having someone from Felicia Petrie's office and John Ames for our next meeting in March. But with all the changes that's coming about with the COVID-19 pandemic, shot locations, Fair Park becoming a major hub for the shots, I was lucky enough, real lucky enough, to get our county commissioner, Teresa Daniel, to come to the March meeting and talk with us, give us an update on COVID. And in addition to her, she's so high-tashi, she's going to try very close to bringing with her Dr. Wong from our Health and Human Services Department. So I think the two of them will be very bang up to tell us about that. And what I did also was I moved the March team, but I changed it also down to April. I forgot to say this, Representative Daniel will be the lead on her March event. Our tax assessor, John Ames, is basically my lead on the April event. And what I thought about that was this. John Ames can come in as our tax assessor and talk to us about some of the benefits that we have in paying taxes and some of the programs that's available to us that we may not be familiar with. And I also asked him if he would do me a favor and bring Cheryl Jordan along. Cheryl Jordan is she worked in the protest department at the Dallas County Appraisal District. May is the month where we file protests, or the last time we have to file protests. So I wanted them to come out and talk to us a little bit about that, because I'm sure there's a lot about that we don't know. And with that, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but that's the end of my report.
Great, thank you. I'm seeing in the comments, I know Terry, you are still trying to get the hang of the Zoom stuff, but in the comments, there's a lot of very favorable comments on the program. So great program, keep up the good work, great program. So I think today was great. So great job getting us out of the gate in 2021 with some great programming. And I'm looking forward to these next two. I think those will be spectacular. I did post in the chat area the next sign up if you want to make sure you don't miss that one. So it'll be in the same kind of Zoom format. And based on what we hear in March, we want to have a little better idea of what we'll be doing post-pandemic or moving into in-person meetings. But that's not something that we've started planning on at this point. So
I'm sorry, I missed that.
the next report up here, let's hear from our treasurer, Tim Sexton.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everyone. I see blue skies and sunshine out there, and I'm happy about that. So let me give you a little idea about how our club is doing financially. These figures will be as of the end of January, which is the last complete month we have figures for. Our bank balance is $3,738.45. For the month of January, we had a total income of around $850. And we nowadays, we don't have a lot of expenses, but we did have about $25 worth of expenses. So I would like to thank folks, or first of all, maybe I should say it's time to renew your dues if you're thinking about that. So please have that in your mind. And I'd like to thank the following people for renewing their dues during the month: Ginelle Hopkins Jones, Jeanette Roseland, Pat Kidd and Phyllis Rose, Karen Strand, Aaron Moore, Patty Fink, Doug and Elizabeth Skimp, Alexandra Gio, Kara Corliss, our past president, Judge Audrey Moorhead, and Christy Noble. Thank you all for paying. Also, I want to express appreciation for those folks who responded to a call to create a memorial contribution for two of our members that passed away. And recently, one was Sally White, who's made considerable contribution to our club in the past, ever since I've been involved, and also to Vernie Crabtree. And I'll be sending those contributions on to what the family suggested by the end of March. I'm just going to cut it off and send it in. So far, we've received contributions through January and February. That's my report.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Thanks for taking care of our finances. And to add on to that, I did suggest to the executive committee, and I believe everyone was on board with doing this, but I would like to have a President's Award given at the Chili Supper every year for a Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats member that's gone above and beyond as a member. And I've thought about that a little bit since our last executive meeting, and I would like to call that the Sally White President's Award. Because I think that when we talk about someone that embodies what our membership is, and someone that we want to remember, I think that that would be very well behoove her to do that. So I think that's something as president that I can move forward with as part of my presidential power. So we'll call it the Sally White President's Award, and we'll look forward to giving that to a club member in October. Hopefully someone on the call right now. Okay, so moving on to the PAC secretary or PAC treasurer, Dale?
We file a monthly report. It's usually the first week of the month. We filed Friday, February 5th was our deadline. We report all contributions to the club and all expenditures, and we have faithfully done that. And thank you all for your contributions. And I would like to just commend the club for acknowledging Sally White's leadership. She's one of those that recruited me along with Teresa Daniel to get involved in the club many moons ago. So I think it's appropriate that Sally be recognized in that way. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Dale. And appreciate keeping up with all of our official filings that we need to do. I know that's tough. So moving on to other official things we need to do, we have the unofficial minutes from the prior January club meeting posted in the chat a few times. If we could take a look at those just briefly while we hear a report from our Secretary, Rhonda Green.
Well, that is the report. The minutes are posted. There is one thing I'd like to say about Sally. I want to thank everybody. I've had so many calls and texts about her, but I do want y'all to know she had a precious little cat named Bear. And one of the saddest and most stressful parts about her passing was finding Bear a home. And he has a wonderful home now. He is in a house with 2 other cats. But he has already established his dominance because the lady who has him sent a picture, and Bear is very comfortably napping on the pillows on the bed. And the cats that have been there for years are on the foot of the bed. So Bear has established his dominance, and that would make Sally very happy.
Very sweet. Thank you. So we do have the minutes posted. I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes for the January 2021 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are official. We'll get those posted on the website as official minutes. Moving on to the membership report. Judy, can you give us an update?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Judy.
Good. How is everyone today? Dale, I wanted to just make a comment. I'm sure anybody, Dale's had to deal with a frozen water pipe, and so have I. So I know the stress of that. Anyway, membership. I'd like to thank everybody for paying their dues. We had a very busy month. In fact, I'm still updating. I have a couple more I've got to update here. So membership dues, thank you, Brian, for bringing that up in the newsletter. I think that got reminded everybody since we're not meeting in person these days. And thank you, Rhonda, for finding a home for the cat. I did that some years ago with a little dog that somebody had passed away, and I took care of the dog and took it under my wings. So I know the feeling of doing that, and it's very important. Otherwise, everything's going along just fine. I also wanted to know, let everybody know I did get the pins that we're going to be using one of these days when we can kind of get live with each other. They came out very, very well. And any of you who want one, basically, I've got them under my wing here. So they're stored in there with the t-shirts, Brian. Also, still have t-shirts for any of those who'd like some. They're in my possession. So anybody who would like a t-shirt. So that's about it for now. We're hanging around 200 members, which is kind of where it's actually around 220 at this point. So that's kind of where we are. Still working on it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, moving on to old business. Is there any old business that we have to conduct today? I don't believe there is. And new business.
Under new, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, under new business, I have an announcement. I decided to do it this way. My son told me, I said, what? I don't know. Want to make a speech? What do I say? He said, don't worry, Mom. They won't remember much you said, only how long it took you to say it. So I'm going to be brief. But as an original member of the Lake Highland Democrats, I want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to serve as your short-time vice president. I have enjoyed it for the moment, but I am sorry to tell you that as of today, I must resign this position. I have taken a job with State Representative Symphonia Thompson out of Houston, Texas. I will be doing all of her work for her constituents with criminal justice and prison issues and matters. I will be back and forth out of Dallas, Houston, sometimes in Austin, and I don't feel that I will have the appropriate time to give to the program. Thanks again for the opportunity, but I must resign as of today.
Okay, thank you for that update, Terry. On behalf of the club, I will say that this first program was amazing, and I've always appreciated your comments as a member in all of our other meetings. I can't say enough about your contributions to the club, and congratulations on your new opportunity. And hopefully we'll be able to bring more of your experience back to the club in that new role. So let us know how we can help.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Would anyone else like to offer congratulations or any comments on the new business issue or announcement?
We're going to miss you having this position, Terry. But I'd like to personally congratulate you. I think that's a good role for you, and she's lucky to have you.
Thank you very much. Like I said, I've enjoyed the short time that I've been in this position, and I'm going to do my very, very best with my job.
Thank you, Representative, the Honorable Terry Hodge. And now let's just see how else you can help all of us across the state and in Dallas County. Congratulations on your new job. I know we'll be talking.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I know you're a member of the club, but once I saw you up there, I thought, wow, we need to recognize our commissioner getting up on a Saturday morning and coming for the meeting and letting me tell him that she's going to be next month's program.
Thank you, Terry, for all you've done.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Daniel.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Terry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for the opportunity. And I hope that little book will come in handy for those of you that have it.
No, I think it's awesome. I really appreciate that.
That's great.
So while we're under new business, I did want to ask the executive committee about the meeting for Monday. Typically, we do it on the third or the fourth Monday after the meeting. However, in a short month, our executive meeting wouldn't be till March. So I would like to propose that we do it this coming Monday. I know that we typically don't have financials ready and so forth, which was the reason why we typically did it later in the month. Tim, Rhonda, Dale, Judy, are you available on this coming Monday at 5 o'clock?
That's the 22nd.
Judy's available. I'm there. I've already got it on my calendar. Brian?
Okay.
Dale's getting his COVID shot at 5:10 on Monday, so.
Okay.
So I'm not very available.
Okay. Tim,
I'm available.
things look good for you? Okay. Dale, is it possible for us to give you a recap or to?
Sure, and I'll try and see if I can do it through my phone, so.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, we'll set that meeting for Monday at 5. If there's not any other new business, it's about noon, which is what we projected for this. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, move.
So moved.
So moved.
Stay warm.
And I see Susie's got the second up. She's seconding with her peace sign. All in favor of adjourning the meeting today? Say aye.
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 Bye.
Opposed? None opposed? The meeting will adjourn at 12 o'clock on Saturday, February 20th. Thanks everyone for participating today, and thanks to our great speakers, the representatives, and it was a great program. So looking forward to March and hearing from Commissioner Daniel, and hopefully we will be in a much brighter place than we are today coming out of a global pandemic in Dallas County. So thanks everyone, stay safe. Feel free to call or email or get in touch with any of us executive board members if you need anything. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
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 Bye.